Becky with iHeart Studios, and today I am going to be painting a picture for you, and I decided on a lovely fall themed picture of a pumpkin and a cute little cat. So why don't you join me today as we paint this picture on our little canvas. So today we're going to be painting our picture on a 12 by 16 canvas, and we're going to be using some tools to help us. It's much more fun to paint when your paintbrushes have names. And so here in the studio, I'd like to introduce you to the paintbrushes that we will be using. The large one we like to call Big Daddy. And then we have our Little Mama. We have Average Joe, Joe Jr., and our baby brush. And then we'll also be using a cup of water, a paper towel, and then just 4 colors of paint for the picture that we'll be doing today. The colors we'll be using are black and white. We'll be using earth brown and then a light turquoise color, just like this. So the first thing that I'm going to be doing is just using a regular pencil, and I'm going to be just sketching lightly the picture on my canvas. This is just going to save me some time from having to wait for the entire background to dry, so I'll just be painting in sections. Okay, so I'm going to be starting with the stem of the pumpkin. And I do like to draw really light, so that way if I need to erase anything, it's just easier if I already have very light pencil marks. And this stem, it's almost like an upside down triangle, except this part that comes to the bottom won't come to a point. This is actually going to be the center part of our pumpkin at the top. I'm going to do a little rainbow pencil mark here. This is going to be the center part of our large pumpkin. And then we're going to be having the outside parts. I'm kind of a sketcher, so I don't like to do one big line. I really like to do just little sketches. And it is okay if each side is not symmetrical, because pumpkins in the wild are not symmetrical. And so let's make it more a little realistic by purposefully not letting them be exactly the same. So here is my standard pumpkin shape. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add my cat in. And the cat, I'm basically going to be starting with the body of the cat. And that is going to be a large oval at the bottom for the body. And these are just my sketch marks. All right. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put the head on the cat. Basically putting a large circle here. And I'm going to stick some ears up on this kitty. And I'm going to give it a little nose, basically a little triangle shape. This little nose. And I'm going to erase my extra circle parts. And once I have most of the cat in there, then I'll go ahead and readjust anything that I need to. The neck is going to kind of come down like this, and then it's going to have a cute little paw that comes forward. So it's basically just taking a bunch of different shapes, putting them together. We have our oval, circle, a couple triangles, and a paw. And then we don't want to forget the tail of the cat. Just going to come right up here like this and kind of curl around. And then the back side of the tail. And then the cats always have kind of this hind leg right there. So the tail doesn't actually come all the way down to the ground. It's more so that the leg is going to be there. Here's my pumpkin on the inside. And this is going to be the basic shape of what I'll be painting today. You can see it, it's pretty light. And I may need to adjust things as I get going, but it's a good start. I do like to say every time that I paint, it's really hard to duplicate myself. So usually my sample picture that I start with, what I actually am painting live does turn out a little bit different because paint kind of has a mind of its own and it really likes to do its own thing. And it's also really important to remember that we all are very unique and different. Just like we have different handwriting, the way that we paint is going to be different. So we really can't compare ourselves to each other, even if we are painting the same picture. They always turn out very different. So this is going to be the general sketch of what I'll be doing. And I'm going to start with the outside of my painting, and things may change as I'm painting. My sketch is really just a tool to kind of keep me on track. So I like to mix my colors right on the canvas. That way I'm not wrecking all of the paint colors that I have on my plate, and it allows the backgrounds and the different things that I'm painting just to have different variants of light with them. So I will be using the white, the light turquoise, and the brown to be in the background here. That's what I'll be starting with. And I like to start with white just because it helps fill in the texture of the canvas. And I'm basically just going to gently put the white on the canvas. I like to think of my paintbrush kind of like a ballerina. It likes to stay on its toes, floating across the canvas. And this isn't where I'm going to be taking out all of my anger and frustration. I just want to do nice, light brush strokes. So that way I'm not pushing the paint all around the place and it's splattering off my canvas. And it's just fun to watch it kind of float around and take its shape. When I'm at this point, I will be adding a little bit of brown to the light turquoise color. I'm just going to dip in my brown and just kind of add it in. It's not going to be as dark as it initially will feel at first. And eventually the whole background will kind of have this whole brownish teal color. It's kind of a fun fall color. So I am just going to be filling in everything outside this pumpkin using just a mixture of the teal, the white, and the brown. At this point, I'm not too concerned if I use white first or teal first. I'm just going to have some fun with the colors and get them on there. Here in the studio, I really like to emphasize that we like to paint not for perfection. Painting here in the studio is more for fun, and a lot of people have a very hard time just relaxing and letting themselves just have a fun time. And this is just kind of this letting out all of the stress of your day kind of motion, I feel like, and it really does relieve stress, especially if you're not trying to think about being perfect at it. And I always like to think art, especially drawing and painting, it really is a skill that you can learn. Some people have that natural talent, but I feel like you can learn this. You don't have to be a child or a kid to take up the hobby of painting. I think it is something that everyone can do, regardless of your ability, because I hear it all the time. I can't paint a stick figure. And when people are done leaving an event that I have here, everyone's pictures look so amazing. Some people like to cover the sides of their canvases also, so I recommend, if that's something that you would like to do, you can definitely paint the sides. I would paint them as you're going, and that way the outside cover of your canvas will match what you have right here, just on the inside of your canvas. So I basically have the initial background done. I'm going to clean my brush off. And I'm going to start with the pumpkin. Now the pumpkin is a white pumpkin. However, in order to make it look like a white pumpkin, I'm actually going to make it more gray. So cleaning off my Big Daddy brush, wiping it on my paper towel, and now I'm going to be using gray, or black and white to create the pumpkin. Basically, starting on the outside, working my way in, using the lighter colors, and then getting eventually to the black color. So, for the pumpkin, I'm just going to start with white. Just kind of filling in. I'm not going to go over the cat. I have my pencil marks right here, so I'm just going to come down right to where the cat is. And again, I like to mix on the canvas as I'm going. So I'm just going to do a little dip into the black. And it will make it gray. I will lighten up this gray before I'm done with it. But I just want to get a nice shadowy background on here first. And because the cat will be black, it's okay if you cross over that, cross over his back a little bit. So that's just the pure black, but I want to lighten it up. So I'm going to take a scoop of white, just kind of blend some white. I also don't like to start, when I dip in my paint, I don't want to start right on the edge of the pumpkin because that will create a ridge of paint that will be hard to smooth out without making my pumpkin bigger. So I'm going to just put it in the base part, but then I'm going to push it outwards, and it still will change the shape of my pumpkin a little bit. But then I won't have to deal with a huge amount of excess paint on the edge. Going around my cat. I have a lot of dark on my paintbrush already, so I really just need to grab white, and that will just still pull in a lot of those dark grays. I love to paint whimsical things that are more loose than perfect, and I just think it's more fun. What kind of painting do you enjoy doing? And sometimes I don't follow my own advice, and I end up putting on thick paint right at the corner because I just don't think about it. But I'm just going to make my pumpkin grow, and it's okay if it pulls some of that turquoise into the pumpkin. I kind of like some of that in there anyway. Okay, I'm kind of going over his tail a little bit and try and pull my pumpkin out here a little bit farther. I'm going to make my pumpkin grow. I'm painting over my tail. I don't want to do too much of that. I don't want to lose its shape too much. I do turn my Big Daddy brush that skinny direction, so that way it's not going on there too wide. Just to help fill in those edges a little bit. All right, now I just need to get into this part down here. All right, I'm going to do my stem up here with just the pure black. It's growing. It's getting bigger and bigger. Like I said, those pencil marks are just kind of a tool to help us stay on track, but paint has a mind of its own. All right, now for my kitty, I am going to switch to my little mom brush, just because the details and the edging in the cat, it's just a little bit smaller. So just dipping in the pure black right now, I'm going to start. Now as a right-handed person, I'm going to start on this side of the cat and work my way that direction. That way I don't have to risk getting my hand in the paint. So just gonna fix the edge of his head, her head. I have a little cat named Pokey at home, so I like to think of it like my cat. Little forehead. And get his little nose in there. Basically that little triangle. And hopefully it will kind of come out how we want it to. The nice thing about drawing the image on with a pencil is it's kind of like a coloring book then. As long as you don't cover up your lines too much, it's really just trying to stay in the lines. Here's a little paw. All right, gonna get that back. Turning my little mama that thin direction again, just to help me get that edge nice and clean. And there might end up being places in the pumpkin, like right there behind the neck of the cat that I probably missed, but I can fix those up as I am touching up the pumpkin and adding more weight to it. Well, I'm taking a big scoop just to help fill that in. It's a big spot for her to fill in. There may be parts of the cat that will need a second coat. But so far, it's looking pretty good. All right, getting this tail on the back side of our cat in. Little leg. All right, now for the tail, what I'm going to do is I'm basically just going to go this skinny direction with my little mama, and I'm just going to bring it up right through the center and turn it kind of like that. That way I don't have to try and worry about exactly filling in the space that I had, but if I just start with a line, then it's easier to just widen that little line on either side. So I've been in this space here in Wisconsin Rapids, 340 West Grand, for 1 year ago this week, which is pretty exciting. And I am so lucky to be with, I just feel like this community has been so supportive, especially after the year we've had. And I just love creating with people. I feel like my tagline in life is just inspire people to create. That is my overall goal. And so I hope that by you watching this, it may look like it's easy. It takes some time to practice. So I may make it look like it's easy, but I hope that you'll try painting at least and that you're feeling inspired to create something, whatever it is. My cat kind of looks like a cat. I think I'm going to fix his. Sometimes it takes a different perspective. You have to like stand back and look at it a little bit. So his head needs to come back this way. See, you can just kind of change things around a little bit. Oh, now his ear needs to grow a little bit. And let's see. what's really nice about painting with acrylic paint is it does dry pretty fast. So if you need to make adjustments or corrections, you can do that. So as I look back and I look at my cat, it doesn't look too bad. It looks like he could be a cat. I don't want to be too picky about things because it's really supposed to be fun. Alright, so since I'm working with the black paint, I'm going to go ahead and do some outlining of my pumpkin. I'm just going to take my, I'm going to move to a smaller brush. I'm going to start using my average Joe. And when I like to use my average Joe to do lines. And it's much easier than trying to use the baby brush because the bristles aren't as soft as a baby brush. And a lot of times I like to say that drawing a straight line with the average Joe is kind of like bowling. You don't want to move your wrist. You just want to move your fingers back and forth. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to dip into my paint, and I'm going to wipe it off on my plate here. So I still have paint on it, but when I look at my brush, it creates this kind of like a little chisel brush where the bristles all come together, and I'm going to go ahead and just press it on here totally flat. Now notice I'm not going to be moving my wrist. I'm just going to be moving my fingers if I need to. And I still do that little bit of sketch motion when I'm painting. So you might see like this. A sketch motion I feel like is when you paint and then you pick it up and you do it again. It doesn't have to be super tiny. Voila. All right, on this side. Now, if the lines get too thick, that's okay because it will dry. We can always make them thinner if we want to. But it's actually kind of fun then to not worry about those lines so much if you put a little bit of black on the outside here. So I'm just going to kind of brush some black out here. Then it won't look like my lines if you were to get your lines outside. I kind of like that look. You just kind of brush it on there. I'm also going to start adding some lines to my pumpkin itself. So here is the base of that pumpkin stem. And here I'm going to just add in my original rainbow shape. And pumpkins are all so different, so there's really no wrong way to get these lines on there, as long as you're staying within the shape of the pumpkin. So I'm just going to throw some extra little black lines around. I'm going to still be adding some white to it, but it's starting to take some shape. Move my brush off. Now that I've added some of those black lines on there, I'm going to use my average Joe and put some white on. The black background is pretty dry at this point, so I'm just going to dip into the white. Just kind of put some of this on there. I think I'm going to switch to my little mama, just because the space is a little bit bigger. I'm switching to my little mama brush, and just going to add some more white in. It is okay if it picks up some of that black. Actually, I think that's probably what I want. So as we add some of these white highlights to our pumpkin, it's starting to look more like a white pumpkin. I didn't realize how dark I got it. That's okay. Sometimes I do things out of order. It just makes it more fun. And I will be able to touch up that cat, the cat's tail, or any parts that I get over. I guess I wasn't probably intending to get it so white, but I just kind of wanted to. Like I said, paint has a mind of its own, so sometimes it just wants to be more white. So I'm just going to let it be more white. Alright, let's get that. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some more black in there just to bring some of those lines back. And I kind of like the way that it makes more of a gray line anyway. I just don't want to gray the entire thing again. Now, I'm going to go ahead and touch up that cat from the edges that I got white on. And you don't have to use any kind of fancy paint or anything like that. You can just go to the local store and pick up even the small little paints that they have that are 50 cents. Really, any kind of paint that will help you start creating is good. And as you keep painting, if you want to invest in more expensive paints, then go for it. Personally, I kind of prefer using the student grade paints because they dry faster and they're less expensive. So I can pick more colors versus having a thicker paint. But sometimes the issue that you run into with the student grade paints is it just doesn't have as much pigment in it, so you may need to put 2 coats of something on instead of 1. All right, I've touched that cat up. I'm going to go ahead and, while things are drying a little bit here, I'm going to put some highlights in the stem. I put a little bit of white in the stem. I added some black little fun vines. And I also put some white around the outside also. So I'm going to switch to my Joe Junior brush with the white. I'm going to put some white here, just like how I did the black, just so it doesn't look so dark. Kind of goes over the black a little bit and just kind of brushing it on. If I cover up too much black, I can always add it back on. And if I cover up too much of the background, I can always add more of that light turquoise back too. It's just keep playing around with it until you find what looks good to you. All right, a little bit of white up in here. I'm basically going to do a little triangle up here. So it's a little triangle. This is going to be like the light is shining on it. I don't want it to be too light though, so I want to make sure that it kind of grays down a bit. Just by brushing over it, it's blending into the gray, into the black background. Perfect. Now I'm going to take my baby brush and I'm going to add some of the fun little swirls that are going to be like the vines from the pumpkin. So when I put my baby brush into the paint, I do want to do a little twirl in the paint. It helps your bristles come together, so that way, if you have a crazy hair that's sticking out, hopefully it will catch it. And I like to do odd numbers of vines. So I'm going to do 1 vine on one side and 2 on the other side. And I'm just going to let my brush kind of have control, my hand. You can do these little practices, just kind of go like this. Kind of like cursive. If you practice the cursive letter E, it's a nice little loop-de-loop. So I'm going to try that. Fun little line. And it's a little light and thin, so now that I actually have that on there, I'm just going to go over it and darken it up a bit. And this is a ginormous pumpkin, so your little vine can be ginormous too, if ginormous is a word. And if it's not, it's fun to say. So I have one on that side. Now, if you would prefer to keep them more simple, you can. You can just create something that will just kind of come up like this and do a little almost twirl. So this here I'm going to pull up, just darken it a little bit, make it a little thicker. With the baby brush, you really have to just, I like to think of it like a ballerina. Keep it up on its toes because it wants to go, it wants to lay down. So just nice and light. All right, and for this one, I'm actually going to do a little bit of a wave to it, but I can also add the letter E to it if I would like. So here we go, letter E, cursive letter E, and a little wave. Now, even though I ran out of paint about here, you still want to continue to go with it because it's harder to try and start that motion over than it is to just go with it. Now, it's really, really light. I can see it, so that way I can go over it darker. So I'm just going to start over here, cursive letter E. And then this is where I ran out of paint on my brush, but I can still see the light hint of where it was. A little wave. Come right into that stem. Now I'm going to sign my masterpiece. And I signed everything with the name my mother gave me, Rebecca T. Winter. So everything is spelled R-T-W. And letters can be tricky. So if you have a foam plate or a paper plate, practice on that, or use a paint pen or a Sharpie. And now I can feel proud of my picture and hang it on the wall. All right, we are going to compare the two pictures and see how they turned out. I think they turned out pretty good. I think it's Mama Cat and Baby Cat maybe, but overall I think they are very similar in what I'm trying to convey. And really, one thing I like to tell people too is when you leave here, like if you were in the studio painting with a group of people, when you leave here and you go home, no one sees the other pictures that were here. And so it's really important, for one, remember we're not comparing ourselves to others, but then we're also not going to point out any problems or issues that we had, because I promise you, no one will see them. they will just think, wow, you're so talented. I can't believe you painted that. So I hope that you're inspired to create something. I would love for you to join me for some upcoming things that I have going on here in the studio. Here in the studio, we paint on all sorts of things with canvases from 8 by 10 up to 16 by 20s. I teach classes, workshops on painted windows, antique windows. I teach workshops with porch signs and all sorts of different varieties of things. So coming up, I'm just going to show you a couple things that we'll be painting here in the studio. I do post a lot on my Facebook page, which is found at www.facebook.com/iheartartstudios. Make sure you put an S on the end. You can also find a lot of information on my website at www.iheartartstudios.com. And I've actually just been updating my website this week so you can see what a bunch of the fall pictures and upcoming holiday Christmas pictures are going to be. And if you would like to paint a picture and there isn't an event scheduled for it, just contact me. I would love to set up that class that you can attend on your schedule. And there's so many fun options. So coming up on Friday, September 25th, we're going to be painting this picture. This is on a 10 by 20 canvas. My favorite thing to paint in the whole wide world are sunflowers. And so this is a beautiful, with a fake fence background with sunflowers and pumpkins. Then coming up, I actually have a couple of fundraisers. I do like to run fundraisers. It's a great way to raise money for your cause. And it can be for a friend, a family member, for something more organized if you would like. On October 3rd, I am going to be doing a fundraiser for the Alzheimer's Association. I don't have the picture right here with me, but you can find that on my website. I have coming up on October 11th, I'm doing a fundraiser for Russell Gymnastics in Stevens Point. And it's actually going to be held off-site at their gym, which is kind of cool. It's going to be a mom and me type of picture. And we're going to be painting these super cute owls. So if you're just a one person who wants to come, you can paint it as one person. Paint it as one person. You can pick this owl or this one. If you wanted to make it into a mom and me, or dad and me, or anything like that, you could do two, and they could be different. You could each do this owl or each do this owl. Or say you have more kids than, say you're a mom and you want to paint with your 3 kids, then what you're going to do is you can just keep adding more branches to the tree, and you can have a whole family of owls up here. So this is a great picture that will help support Russell Gymnastics coming up on October 11th. And this is something new I've just tried out, painting on canvas bags. And so this is something new that I hope to introduce within the next month or so. And if you're interested in something like this, please let me know. Isn't that pretty? Now I'm going to show you some pictures that are really fun. I just purchased a black light. So I do a lot of paint pour parties where we pour paint onto canvas. We also make posters and such. But these are just 2 little examples of some black light parties that I'll be having in the future. Look at that! Isn't that cool? See how they glow? My plan will be to have the party with the light on in the evening. However, once we get to a certain point in our party, I really want to turn the lights off and just have the black lights on. I think that would be really fun. So we can just look at our pictures and enjoy their glow in the black light. And if there's anything that you are interested in creating, if you look at Pinterest a lot and you like to pin different things that you want to create, but then you find that you never end up doing it, if there's that one thing that you really want to do, just contact me. I will go ahead and put together a workshop for you so that way you could actually create that item that you've always wanted to make. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time. Bye!